By the time Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets concluded its theatrical run in late 2002, the franchise had already become a global cultural juggernaut. But for the third film, Warner Bros. Made a bold and unexpected decision to shake up the formula. The plot follows Harry's third year at Hogwarts as he learns that Sirius Black, a dangerous convict from the wizard prison Azkaban, has escaped and may be coming after him. Strange creatures called Dementors haunt the school grounds, and Harry begins to uncover secrets about his family's past that will change him forever. Despite initially being hired to helm all of the movies, Chris Columbus opted to not come back as director for this one, as he didn't want to be attached to one franchise for his entire career and wanted to spend more time with his children. So why agree to helm all of the movies in the first place then?
Sorry?
He did however agree to stay on board as a producer, and this allowed him to work on the movie without having to be present on set at all times. The studio saw a fresh vision to match the growing complexity of J.K. Rowling's third book. Guillermo del Toro was the first to be approached, but he turned it down after the producers rejected his idea for a more Dickensian approach to the series, and he was also put off by the tone of the first two movies, which he found to be far too bright and happy. Mark Foster was then asked but rejected it as he had just made Finding Neverland and didn't want to direct another project with child actors, and other considerations included Kenneth Branagh, Callie Khouri and M. Night Shyamalan, where Voldemort ends up being Harry's Aunt Agnes in disguise.
That was not funny.
Eventually, Alfonso Cuarón was selected to direct, a decision that J.K. Rowling highly approved of, as she was told that he didn't have any transgender friends. Okay, for Cuarón's sake, that bit was made up, as far as I'm aware.
Sure.
She approved of Cuarón as director because she was a huge fan of his movie A Little Princess and felt that his style of filmmaking was perfectly suited to the series. However, Cuarón was extremely hesitant to take on the job as he hadn't read any of the available books, nor had he seen the first two movies, and initially he had no intention of doing so until Guillermo del Toro told him to stop being arrogant and to read them immediately.
That's what matters.
But this bold move would redefine the entire look and feel of the Harry Potter franchise. From the beginning, Cuarón was very keen to establish a new, more mature tone for the franchise, as he felt the look of the movie should reflect the angst feel by its teenage characters. He also insisted that the child actors should wear modern street clothes more often as opposed to always being in their uniforms in order to convey the characters' personalities. In addition, before filming began, Cuarón set an assignment for the three lead actors where they would write an autobiographical essay about their characters in the first person. Emma Watson turned in 10 pages, Daniel Radcliffe wrote a short piece, but Rupert Grint famously didn't do it because that's what Ron would have done. It was at this point Cuarón knew that Rupert Grint fully understood his character.
What are you talking about?
He made lighting colder, moodier and more atmospheric. Shadows, wind, rain and dramatic skies became central tools in storytelling. He incorporated long takes, handheld cameras and symbolic imagery like the Whomping Willow transitions that lent the film a poetic and sophisticated visual language. Rowling was so impressed with Cuarón's tone that she encouraged him to explore liberties that served the emotional truths of the story, even if some moments deviated from literal book details. Steve Kloves returned to adapt the third book, which is notably different from the previous two. Darker, more emotional and centered less around Voldemort and more around identity, trauma and personal demons. The Prisoner of Azkaban is a story deeply rooted in mystery, misdirection and revelations, making it uniquely cinematic. Several new characters were introduced with perfectly cast performers. Gary Oldman as Sirius Black delivered a performance that ranged from terrifying to tragic. Oldman was Cuarón's personal choice and Rowling supported the decision completely. He too wasn't overly familiar with the series and only accepted the role of Sirius because he needed the money. However, he later found that he greatly enjoyed his experience making the film and was also surprised by how tricky it was to pull off the dialogue, even comparing it to Shakespeare. However, Oldman was later quite critical of his performance as he hadn't read all of the available books before filming and felt that he would have played the role differently had he known the full context of what was happening. David Thewlis joined as Professor Remus Lupin, the kind-hearted yet haunted Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. Thewlis brought nuance, empathy and gravitas to the role. Thewlis was always Cuarón's first choice, as he was a huge admirer of the actor's performance in the film Naked. However, Thewlis was unsure about accepting the part due to his unfamiliarity with the series, but he was persuaded by his friend Ian Hart, who played Professor Quirrell in the first film, who assured him that Lupin was the best part of the book. But amazingly, Robin Williams, apparently undeterred from being unable to play Hagrid in the first film, reportedly met with the producers once again for the role of Lupin, but was turned away due to the franchise's British-only rule for casting, even though they considered Christopher Plummer for Dumbledore, who is Canadian.
Are you deaf?
Emma Thompson was cast as the eccentric Professor Trelawney with comedic timing and offbeat energy, and Michael Gambon took over as Dumbledore following the death of Richard Harris. Gambon's interpretation was more energetic and mysterious, departing from Harris's serene portrayal. Harris's family wanted his good friend Peter O'Toole to take the part, but he declined due to the time commitment required for the role, and also because his advancing age would make him difficult to insure. Ian McKellen was then considered, but he too turned it down, partly because he didn't want to play another famous wizard after Gandalf, but also because Harris had called him a dreadful actor in the past, and he didn't feel comfortable taking over a role from an actor who didn't approve of him. Richard Attenborough then lobbied hard for the part but didn't get it, and other considerations included Christopher Lee, Sean Connery, Anthony Hopkins, Albert Finney, Michael York, Christopher Plummer, Jim Broadbent, Roger Moore, A Tuna Sandwich, Tom Wilkinson, Michael Caine and Timothy Dalton, before the role ultimately went to Michael Gambon. Gambon claimed that he tried to take the character in his own direction without the intention of trying to imitate or copy Harris, though he decided to play the role with a slight Irish accent as a tribute to the late actor.
Very well.
Filming ran from February to November 2003, and this marks the first film in the franchise to make extensive use of real-life locations as opposed to studio sets. Many sequences, such as the Hippogriff lesson and the Dementor attack by the lake, were filmed on location in Scotland and Surrey, and many of the Hogwarts scenes were filmed on site at the University of Oxford. Furthermore, because the Azkaban book was much longer than its predecessors, some major changes had to be made to keep the pacing efficient. Several scenes of heavy exposition were trimmed down, particularly in the Shrieking Shack scene, and many of the novel's subplots were either removed or greatly condensed. For example, Sirius gifting Harry a firebolt broomstick at the end of the film originally happened about halfway through the novel and was the subject of a major storyline where Hermione reports the gift to the Hogwarts staff, thinking it might be a trap laid by Sirius, thereby causing a rift between her and Harry. In addition, the filmmakers also chose to subtly imply things that were explicitly revealed in the books, such as the fact that Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot and Prongs were Lupin, Pettigrew, Sirius and James, and that they were the creators of the Marauders map. Cuarón pushed the cast, especially the younger actors, to dig deeper emotionally. Daniel Radcliffe said that Cuarón helped him explore Harry's anger, frustration and vulnerability in a more personal way. The scene where Harry rides Buckbeak the Hippogriff combined CGI and animatronics. Radcliffe was strapped to a motion-controlled rig and genuinely reacted with joy and awe. The Dementors were visualised using underwater footage of cloth billowing, which was then digitally composited into floating ghost-like monsters, and they became iconic. The Time Turner sequence involved elaborate planning, choreographed movements, and visual effects to ensure both timelines matched perfectly. It was a technical marvel at the time. Returning composer John Williams took his music into new territory. While retaining core themes, he added gothic and eerie compositions. Cuarón also encouraged improvisation. Many of Ron and Hermione's interactions were unscripted, leading to more natural chemistry. The Marauders map was a massive practical prop with detailed footprints and secret passageways, and it became one of the most beloved artifacts in the series. The night bus sequence was shot using practical effects combined with visual effects for the stretching and squeezing, and the werewolf design was inspired by Plague-era depictions which Rowling approved, though she later said it differed from how she originally imagined Lupin's transformation. Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban was released on May 31st, 2004, and like its predecessors was a monster hit, grossing $798 million in its original theatrical run, making it the lowest grossing film in the main series, but still the second highest that year, only behind Shrek 2. On top of that, critical reception was even more positive than the first two, many acclaiming the major shift in tone and style, as well as Cuarón's direction and the performances. The film earned 2 Oscar nominations for Best Original Score and Best Visual Effects, and is often cited by critics and fans alike as the best entry in the franchise. The Prisoner of Azkaban is widely credited with setting the tonal foundation for all future Potter films, as well as pushing the boundaries of what fantasy adaptations could be and introducing a darker, more character-driven direction that allowed the series to grow with its audience. Filmmakers like David Yates, who would later direct most of the series, often cited Cuarón's installment as the standard bearer, and it elevated the film's mood and character introspection, blending wonder with melancholy. Even Rowling herself later said Alfonso blew the doors open. He changed how these stories could be told on film. The thing with the film is it's a fantastic movie and it's a great adaptation of my personal favourite novel of the series, but it's not a very good sequel. The movie banks on the viewer having knowledge of the source material, otherwise so much of it will be completely lost on you. Once Harry runs away from home, he gets picked up by the night bus and then asked where he wants to go.
The Leaky Cauldron!
Why? This is only shown in one scene in the first movie. Harry and Hagrid briefly pass through, they say hello to a few people and that's it. But here, all of a sudden, for some reason, Harry decides that this is a place that will keep him safe. Not only that, but when he gets there, Ron and Hermione are there too, as if it's common knowledge. Yeah, everyone just stays in this pub? all of the time. Then when they get to the school, everything is changed. The castle looks like it's been knocked down and rebuilt over the summer. Hagrid's hut moves to the bottom of a hillside, and the Whomping Willow has miraculously transported itself from directly inside the castle to further up on a damn cliff top. Now, technically, I suppose it's not Cuarón's fault because it was Columbus who got the locations wrong, and Cuarón is simply correcting his error. However, the inconsistencies would only continue throughout the rest of the franchise, and it just began here. This is when they began to become more and more focused on adopting a singular novel and not just continuing the flowing story from the previous films. They're like separate adaptations and not sequels to the preceding movies. That being said, I certainly do consider this to be the first adult Harry Potter film, and I do really appreciate the more mature tone and style. And the actors are really improving as performers. Daniel Radcliffe has gotten a lot better, and he and Lupin do have some great chemistry. Although his performance is still sometimes a bit shaky.
Shut up! Shut up!
He was their friend, and he betrayed them.
As is Seamus.
Dementors. He's already slipped past them once, hasn't he? Who's to say he won't do it again?
Pam Ferris plays his evil aunt, and she is so over the top, she is hilarious.
Oh, you're still here, are you? I won't have this namby-pamby, wishy-washy nonsense about not beating people who deserve it. Say yes in that ungrateful way. Quiet, Vernon, you. Clean it up.
The visual effects of her blowing up is actually really impressive. I just love Vernon's reaction. It's almost like, oh, not again. I mean, these do look great. Fair play to the visual effects department on this one. Even the visual effects of the bus zooming around all of the traffic and muggles looks amazing. And the CGI of Buckbeak, they went all out on these effects. There is a really wonderful scene as Harry flies him. It's just awesome. It does get really creepy as Harry is on his own waiting for the bus. This is like something out of Are You Afraid of the Dark? Can you tell it's a new director? Just look at it. It doesn't even feel like a film in the same franchise. Calm down, mate. It's about wizards. There's even an evil killer man-eating book. Although it does have some great comedy, which is very, very British.
What you doing down there?
I fell over.
What you fell over for?
I didn't do it on purpose.
Arthur Connan gives Harry a fatherly talk about Sirius to try to keep him safe, and I do find the relationship between Harry and the Weasleys really sweet, how they've taken him in as their own. And Arthur does a great job building up the severity of who Sirius is and what he's accused of. It's also worth noting how amazing this cinematography is. This entire conversation is all done in one take, and it looks fantastic. It's like the director used this film as a practice run for Children of Men. The first time we see a Dementor is incredible. It's out of a damn horror film, and I am here for it. Originally, Cuarón also wanted them to freeze the rain outside the carriage, but this idea was soon dropped.
I felt weird though. Like I'd never be cheerful again.
Like I just watched Thunderpants. And now I just have to say it. Michael Gambon is absolutely terrible as Dumbledore. Richard Harris sounded and looked like this wise old wizard. Every single word he said sounded magical and charming and whimsical and wise. He genuinely came across like someone who could easily be believed as the most powerful wizard in the world. Every teacher at Hogwarts, they all had defining personalities based on the actors' performances alone. They all stood out, from Alan Rickman to Maggie Smith to the others. Michael Gambon? Just a bloke in a cloak.
Welcome, welcome to another year at Hogwarts. Ah, yes, I'm Dumbledore. You all right?
They will not distinguish between the one they hunt and the one who gets in their way.
And then let's all go down the pub. I'm Dumbledore.
Not a single professor inside this castle would help Sirius Black to enter it.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Well,
He's free. We did it.
I shall go and pick up my dry cleaners. I'm Albus.
I'm sorry, but he just doesn't work. There's no aura around him. It's just some bloke playing dress up pretending he's a wizard.
Scabbers who did it.
Scabbers.
Although it is funny to hear Dumbledore say the word scabbers. It is nice to see Dawn French pop up because apparently every British actor who's ever existed is destined to be in these films at one point in their career. The kids are a lot better in this one. There's some small fun scenes where they imitate animal sounds, and it is really charming to see. We find out later on in the film that Hermione is using a time turner, but the foreshadowing earlier in the movie isn't too subtle.
Where did you come from?
Me? Been here all this time.
You have to be in 2 classes at once.
Don't be silly, Ronald. How could anyone be in 2 classes at once?
When did she get here? When did she come in? Did you see her come in?
There's a really creepy scene as Sally Morgan here reads Harry's fortune and freaks out because she sees death, and it is really intense. And Neville continuing to be owned is still rather entertaining. He also looks so different in this one, can tell the poor guy was going through puberty, bless him. But are we all in the agreement that Hagrid is the best character?
First thing you want to know about hippogriffs is that they're very proud creatures.
very easily offended.
Ah, it's a Gen Z! And although not as much as the previous two, the film does get a quotable meme here or there.
Wait until my father hears that Dumbledore's got this oath teaching classes.
There is a pretty amusing scene as Lupin teaches them about boggarts and they have to turn their worst fears into something funny. For example, Ron sees Thunderpants and turns it into Ready to Stumble.
But Professor, I thought if you signed it, then I could go.
I can't. Only a parent or a guardian can sign. Since I am neither, it would be inappropriate.
And since you're an orphan, too bad, dumbass! I love how he needs parental permission to go on a school trip, but in the next film he enters a dangerous tournament where he nearly dies and they're like, no, nothing I can do. There's a lot more character development in this one as Harry is left behind on the school trip and learns about his mother from Lupin. It built on the lead characters a lot more, if only they kept all of the deleted scenes from the extended cut in the last movie too! Alan Rickman is still as fantastic as always, even making page numbers sound fantastic.
Turn to page 394.
It's just such a great portrayal, as you can tell he resents Harry for being so similar to James, but also cares for him as he is Lily's. They played Quidditch during a monsoon apparently, and the effects look nuts. I will say the pacing is still really good. So much happens in just the first hour of the movie alone, it's really well written. And we don't even see the Prisoner of Azkaban until well over 70 minutes in, and you're never bored. Although Harry gets momentarily distracted by a cloud and then goes to grab the snitch, and I can't help but laugh at the idea of that being how we won the game. The Dementor attacks in the sky, which also looks incredible. This movie is amazing!
Don't your family sleep in one room?
Shut your mouth, Malfoy.
Your comebacks are awful!
I think it's time we teach Weaselby how to respect his superiors.
Hope you don't mean yourself.
So are yours! You're perfect for each other! There's a great scene as Lupin trains Harry to fight off a Dementor.
Expecto Patronum! Expecto! Expecto!
Nah, you're dead. And he defends Harry against Snape. He's a really likeable character. There's an awesome moment where Hermione knocks Malfoy the hell out, but the script, much like the book, only had her slap him. However, during rehearsals, Tom Felton actually told Emma Watson to hit him for real, but didn't think that she actually would. So his reaction is completely genuine, which I like. Draco did deserve it, but the first two movies, it just came across like the Hermione show, where she was awesome at everything and the boys were completely useless. They at least seem like genuine characters here. Although there's a scene where Hermione stands up to Sirius Black, but in the book it was Ron. So the movie basically made up another excuse to make Ron look crap and Hermione look like God, because all praise Hermione. Hermione can do no wrong.
Oh, brilliant.
The time travel stuff loses me a bit. It's like they just saw Back to the Future Part 2 and got inspired. Although this third wheel work is really awkward. The visual effects do get questionable when Ron gets dragged away, and yeah, Hermione doing the same does look pretty bad. Well, he's got broken ribs, but Hermione somehow grabs him along and sure, we're doing this now. Of course, they play the pronoun game to throw us off the scent, but it is quite intense and Gary Oldman nails it. But it's Gary Oldman, he nails any performance. I'm pretty sure he could be cast as Tinky Winky and he'd win an Oscar. And it is really cool when Snape shows up to confront him. It's just such an epic moment seeing all of these characters sharing these exchanges. It leads to a really sweet moment as Harry bonds with Sirius, who's the only family that he has left. Even the transformation scene looks like a slasher flick. Look at it! This was actually all done with practical effects and puppetry at first, but they had to tone it down and CGI over it because it was too violent and scary for kids. Pussies. It's such an awesome square off. This movie made me pregnant. I will give Gambon this much. There's a scene where they go back in time to save Buckbeak from getting killed, and Dumbledore clearly is aware and does everything in his power to distract the Minister of Magic so they can get away, and it is pretty funny. I'm so glad Dumbledore is perfectly okay with disobeying the laws of magic because it just makes the next movie so much easier to resolve. Although this exposition is really forced.
I don't think the Minister is suggesting that you had anything to do with this, Hagrid. After all, how could you? You've been with us all the time.
Thanks for that. The best scene in the film comes when Harry thinks his dead dad is going to save him. Idiot. But it's actually him from the future. Or the past, or oh, who cares? So he saves himself from a bunch of Dementors, which is so cool. And maybe it's just me, but Harry and Hermione look quite cute together. Man, screw Ron! And I love the irony of the most normal Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher still resigning. But as you know with these films, adapting from the book is so easy. Starting from a novel and turning it into a movie doesn't create any plot holes whatsoever. Well, except how awesome it is that Harry uses magic outside of school under his duvet to have a magic wank and this will never be addressed again. Why doesn't he just put his light on? Which is weird because he accidentally gets mad and blows up his Aunt Trunchbull, and then that gets addressed. Cornelius Fudge just says it's no big deal and a memory will be erased, but what about the magic wank he was having in bed? And what about all the times Hermione used magic outside of school? Why have Hogwarts sent Harry back to live with his abusive family again after knowing they put bars in his windows last year? In fact, why did the Dursleys still let him keep this nice bedroom when Vernon nearly died last time? Why did the Dursleys protect Harry and keep the magic world a secret? Why not reveal it to the world to be assholes?
My dad wasn't a drunk.
The hell would you know?
Keep away from me.
You're not allowed to do magic outside school.
He just did! Like 2 minutes before this scene. Are you even paying attention? He blew up your sister. She's blowing away in the wind.
Mr. Weasley,
Why would I go looking for someone who wants to kill me?
It's kind of your thing. Of course, the kids just so happen to sit in the same booth as Lupin as Harry tells them what's going on, just hoping he's asleep.
Maybe we've broken down.
Isn't it a magic train? Why does the Dementor attack Harry on the train when he has so much protection around him?
It was a Dementor, one of the guards of Azkaban. It's gone now. It was searching the train for Sirius Black.
And it went after Harry because...
Is it true you fainted? I mean, you actually fainted.
Surely everyone on the train saw that scary-ass bastard. Oh, Gary over there, he nearly fainted because a lion tried to eat him. What a pussy. Also, how did Draco know that Harry fainted? Ron and Hermione were the only ones in the carriage, and they sure as hell didn't tell him. How has this school not been sued yet? In fact, what were the other kids doing while Harry was flying Buckbeak? And after Buckbeak attacks a student, Hagrid takes Malfoy to the nurse and leaves all of the kids alone with the animal. Why does nobody question Hermione always arriving late to lessons? If she's time travelling, why is she always late to lessons? We get the running joke of Ron noticing and asking where she came from, but it's never acknowledged afterwards. Did they just get out of class and not say a thing? Why does Lupin whisper to Neville what to do with the boggart? Isn't that important information that everyone in the class should know?
You want to know why I stopped you facing that boggart, yes? I would have thought it'd be obvious. I assumed it would take the shape of Lord Voldemort.
But you reacted far too late if you thought that it was Voldemort. You clearly stood there, waited to see that it was a Dementor, and then attacked, you silly git. It's convenient that when everyone is trying to find the fat lady, the magic staircase has never changed once, and somehow Filch is the only one who spots her. Snape and Dumbledore have a whole conversation about a serial killer being on the loose around a bunch of sleeping students. Hermione says,
The werewolf only responds to the call of its own kind.
Later on in the film, Hermione does a fake howl and the werewolf responds to it. In fact, in that same scene, she says,
With each full moon, when he transforms, he no longer remembers who he is.
But then later she tries talking to Lupin after he's transformed.
5 points from Gryffindor.
Because she knew the right answer. The Weasley twins give Harry Marauder's map, which shows everyone on it, and we find out that Scabbers is a middle-aged bloke, so they never questioned all the years that they saw Peter Pettigrew sleeping with her underage brother. In fact, did they not notice their little sister wandering around at night several times in the last movie to control the basilisk? Although, to be fair, he sees Peter on the map later, and before we realise who he is, there's a clever and subtle touch of us hearing some quiet rat noises in the background. Harry is under an invisibility cloak, but we can still see his lollipop. How is he eating it? How does he torment Malfoy when there's snow everywhere so they'd see his footprints and know where he is? And how's he throwing snowballs? His hands would be visible. We see the footprints later, but it's too late, movie. In fact, he hides to hear the exposition of Sirius being his godfather, and they notice the door randomly opening the first time, but he ran away so he would have done it again. Surely someone would have realised that a person had been listening in. There's a scene where Snape catches Harry out of bed in the middle of the night, and somehow Harry gets out of it scot-free, even though in the first one this was bad enough to get him sent to the Forbidden Forest as punishment by a teacher who actually liked him. Okay, Lupin comes along to bail him out, but still, you really think Snape would let him off just because he couldn't prove that the map was dangerous?
My dad didn't strut.
The hell would you know?
Now, I will not cover up for you again, Harry. Do you hear me?
Why'd you cover for him this time? How does Harry use Hermione's wand? I thought the wand chooses the wizard. Now all of a sudden we could just take anyone else's wand? Why didn't Ron do this in the last movie then? And how did Lupin find them? I guess you could argue that he had the map still, but then how did Snape find them? The movie also never mentions the fact that James Potter was also an animagus like Sirius and Pettigrew, and he could turn into a stag, which actually makes a lot of sense given that Harry's Patronus is a stag too. But without it, Harry's Patronus is just a stag, for some reason. Why is the time turner never used again before or after this? In the book, Hermione actually returns it at the end of the year, but for all we know, film Hermione still has that thing in her pocket. Why can't they go back and save Harry's parents? Why can't they save others who die in this franchise? And why are none of these explained in this movie? Regardless of the plot holes, the film is an absolute blast. It's scary, but has some funny moments. The acting is a bit sketchy at points with some of the kids, but it's mostly great. The visual effects and cinematography are insane, and the character development is brilliantly written. Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban wasn't just a sequel, it was an artistic leap. With its haunting atmosphere, powerful new characters, and brave emotional storytelling, it remains one of the most critically acclaimed and culturally impactful films in the Harry Potter canon. Prisoner of Azkaban is easily the best one so far.